Fantastic. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all having me, and it's a pleasure. It's an honor to be able to talk to this group. Yeah, I love listening to Anders, as I always do, and he and I have known each other for a few years right now, and I feel like I can say at this point, because we've had such a good, close working relationship with the Swedish Ice Hockey Association, that I'm done. I have nothing to say. I point to Anders' work and say, yeah, we try to emulate that, but I know everybody wants more than that. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of USA Hockey. So many things are similar, and it's so great because it confirms to me and affirms to our association, to USA Hockey, that we're on the right track, because that really is the amount of respect we have for what they do in Sweden. Just a real quick, a little bit of a bio for me. I've been lucky enough, this is my 40th year in the game. I've done all kinds of things, from being a general manager of an OHL team. I've coached, I've been in player development, and now they've kicked me up to the main office at USA Hockey, where I mostly administrate, but am still fortunate enough to get on the ice sometimes and do as much player development. And really, player development is where the majority of my background has come. The last thing I'll mention, because the IIHF and our relationship with the IIHF is so important, that I've been fortunate enough to be part of two major initiatives at USA Hockey. The first was the beginning of the USA National Team Development Program, which started in 1996 in Ann Arbor and now has moved to Plymouth. And the second has been the launching of the American Development Model, which was approximately 13 years ago in 2009. So I've been very fortunate in what I've done, and it's led me to this and where we are really with coach education. Overall, I think it's really important for everybody to understand that when we look at our coach education program, it's just one piece of our player development model, or our hockey development model. We look at it as player safety. We see officiating as part of the player development model. We see our player development managers, our boots on the ground, are people who are helping in associations, but then also our coach education program. And all four of those departments, if you will, or all four of those subsections of our department, everything we do, we try to abide by these three things. We want to make sure that ultimately every decision we make is good for kids. So whether it's about officiating, whether it's about coaching, whether it's about player development, ultimately everybody wants to be able to answer the question, is our decision ultimately good for kids? The second thing, and I think I share this with all of you really, is that's why you're here, is we want to provide quality programming. And so no matter what we do, we're looking to constantly learn, we're looking to constantly update, and we're looking to see how can we make our programs better. And then the last thing, and this is fairly new for us, is can we take that quality programming and make it customer-centered? And the best example for that right now is we've gone through a large transformation from in-person coaching clinics to virtual coaching clinics, to not just modules, but to interactive virtual coaching clinics where we try to engage each and every participant, but do so online as opposed to in the classroom. Our entire program in coaching now, when we shift over from our entire hockey development department and the four subsections I mentioned, and we now just concentrate on coaching, we are looking at this a little bit differently than we used to. Years ago, USA Hockey there was a real separation between player development side and coaching side. We lived under the same roof. We lived under really the same supervisor or direction, but we were very much in individual silos on how we delivered both coaching and player development. Now we all act very simply under this premise. If we can make better coaches, we'll make a better youth hockey environment, period. Yes, that is player development, because if we have a better youth hockey environment, we'll make better players. So much of what we're doing now is focused on our coach education program, and so much of the work that our player development managers, are people who have boots on the ground, have been shifted to coach education and coach development. USA Hockey has some interesting things. I'm reluctant to say that this is a challenge, because I think so many countries around the world would love to have 60,000 registered coaches a year. And we're very proud of the number of volunteer and registered coaches we have. But training those coaches and trying to get them the right information is very difficult. And it does present some challenges, because we not only want to deliver good and important information, we also have to deliver it on an age-appropriate basis, but also on a basis that's equal to their ability. Often we talk about, as much as we would like to say that we are educating the next Olympic coach, the next NHL coach, the next national team coach in every one of our clinics, more often than not, we're trying to educate just a youth hockey coach, not just a youth hockey coach, but a youth hockey coach, a very important coach. But the way we look at it would be differently than if we were looking at trying to train a limited number of coaches for the very, very highest levels. So when you look at USA Hockey and you look at our coaching education program, we're looking at 60,000 registered coaches a year. The other thing that we're looking at is the fact that our coaches only have approximately a 4 to 5 year lifespan. The large majority of our coaches enter the system with their children. They coach for 4 to 5 years on average, and then they leave the system. So we're constantly having to look at educating new coaches coming in, while keeping an eye on the coaches that are returning, and even that small amount. And when I say small, 10,000, 15,000 coaches that are coaching beyond their 4 to 5 year average lifespan. We do 700 clinics a year throughout the United States. And you can see we have the United States broken up into 13 separate education districts. And each one of those districts has a volunteer coach-in-chief whose job it is to oversee that district and help us make sure we're delivering quality education to every coach in that district. At the end of every year, because we do not require education every single year for every coach, at the end of the year, we will approximately have educated about 30,000 coaches in any given year. And of course, that rotates through. We've had a major change to our coach education program, and this started back in 2019. Actually, we've had a couple of major changes, and I'll touch on them now. The biggest one was the fact that we were going to move away from what we coach and move into how we coach. And if you remember, Anders very much touched on this and talked about this. It's not just about the drills. It's not just about the drill book. It's not the X's and O's. It's not the systems. It's not even, to a certain extent, the technique and skill level of players, but rather how can we deliver the right things, both to our coaches, and then how can our coaches deliver those things to the players. So we moved from what to coach to how to coach, and I have to be honest, it wasn't met with a lot of fanfare. So many of our coaches are focused just on the technical or the systematic that I'm not sharing my screen. I'm getting a message. Is that true?
Sorry there, Bob. You were so enthusiastic in your speaking here that it seemed like the screen could only be seen by you, but now we have a shared screen. Sorry for that.
I am so sorry. I've been changing my slides. I've been sharing my screen. It looks so good on my end. So let me quick. You don't have to worry about this because I spoke about that. I spoke on this, the statement, and I believe everyone's going to get this presentation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So they will be able to, put together the puzzle afterwards as well.
So, hey, I'm nothing if not enthusiastic. So there's the map of the United States and giving you a little bit of an idea. And actually, Kale, thank you for the note, because now maybe the sharing of the screen becomes important. Not so much when I was just talking and reading. So here we go. So in 2019, one of our new coach education proposals is not that it's what you coach, but rather how you coach. And I spoke a little bit about that. The other thing that happened around 2019 is we changed from just having a national program. And how we define that is USA Hockey, since they launched the coaching education program, has always had and been very proud of our national education program. So we had slides, we had direction, we had some research, and we had a roadmap, or an outline would be better, an outline of what all our coach developers, our coach instructors delivered to our coaches. In 2019, when we went down this new path, we looked to not only have a national coaching education program, but a standardized coaching education program. And it was a little bit different. To us, the national program had an outline of what we wanted our instructors to teach, but there was a lot of leeway on who they hired, how they hired, and what that message was. Starting in 2019, and the initiative to how you coach was also met with the initiative of standardizing that program. So one of our biggest, our largest initiatives is that no matter if you take a clinic in Boston, Massachusetts, in Detroit, in Minneapolis, in Dallas, in California, anywhere in the United States, you're going to be delivered the same information and that same standardized curriculum at any clinic you go to. And that's been both a tremendously positive thing for us, but also a great challenge when you look at 30,000 coaches being educated on a yearly basis. After we made the switch to how to coach, or to the initiative or the direction of how to coach, the first thing we did was define our specific learning outcomes. So not only was the curriculum standardized, but each topic within that curriculum had a learning objective or a learning outcome that we expect all our instructors to follow and to push towards. And as I go through some of the topics, you'll understand this or see this a little bit more. But we try never to waver or stray from our specific learning outcome of every topic. The second objective was to provide a better and more efficient learning experience. And what we did there was we moved over from lecture settings or presentation type settings to a facilitation-based program. So we're engaging our coaches, not just in conversation, but more in a workshop environment. So here you see a couple of pictures of what our in-person coaching clinics look like. Separate tables, groups of coaches working together to come up with answers with the help and facilitation of our instructors, and not specific direction of what the instructor wants to deliver or what that specific instructor knows. So again, as Anders has mentioned, we want to use the collective knowledge, the collective experience in the room to help us send the message. And we did a lot of research on not just these, on how to teach, but how do adults learn, and how can we make that learning experience more efficient. And then the third objective, and this is kind of an overall objective, in the United States and USA Hockey, we require, as many our MNAs do across the world, we require coach education. You must do a number of things to get on the ice with our kids. You have to have a background check, because we take the safety of our children very, very seriously. You have to register with the Center for Safe Sport, which is government mandated for our coaches to get on the ice. But the third thing is USA Hockey does mandate the fact that if you coach, you have to take some sort of coaching education. Too often, we were met with, well, I have to take coach education. Or what's your plan to get better this year? Well, I have to take level 1, or I have to take level 2. And now we're trying, through quality programming and through that adult learning experience, to change that narrative so our coaches in the field are saying they want to take coach education, right? When we survey our coaches after our clinics, we are looking for them to say it was a good use of their time, they learned, they are going to either use that in their practices in their coach, or they have used it. And then we're looking for them to say, hey, when can I take the next course? I want to take more coaching education. And as you all know, easier said than done. Everything we do now is for the educators on the webinar, and certainly more knowledgeable than I, everything we've done is based on Bloom's taxonomy and of learning and education. So we look at the foundation of how we learn and what is the educational experience, and we build it. The first thing is that we can get people to remember what they've learned or what they've seen, right? Recognizing and recalling facts. Then the next level is not just remembering those things, but understanding them. So here's the facts I learned, but do I understand them? How do I apply them? So facts, understanding, apply. Can I take what I've learned and now move it into my life or into whatever it is that is being taught? Can we analyze? Once I have a good understanding and I can apply those facts to whatever specific job or task, can I then look at what we're doing and break down that information and analyze how that information is being received? Because that's really what we're looking at, right? The receiving and the educational experience. Then we're looking at the evaluation. Can I take the value of information and judge if it's helping, if it's working. And then the next thing, of course, is creating. Am I getting to the point now where I can combine all that information and create? And what's interesting about this is we then took these different aspects of Bloom's taxonomy of education and learning experience, and we moved it into our levels of our coaching. So we then said, okay, what do we really want for our coaches and in our coaching experience? So we then took that, the classroom setting, and we moved it to the classroom setting of hockey. So at the very, very lowest level, our level 1 coaching, we want coaches to leave being comfortable running a station on the ice. Can they run a drill? Can they understand what the drill is about? And can they run it? The second thing is understanding how to design a drill, right? So we have those facts. We talked about that in the previous slide. We're comfortable getting on the ice, let's say as an assistant coach. What's the next level? Oh, okay. Well, I want to be a head coach. Do I understand basic drill design? Then focus on practice design. So the singularity of individual drill design goes on to practice design. Can I now take a bunch of drills and can I put them into a meaningful practice? And then lastly, can I take my meaningful practices and can I link them together throughout a season in order to have a development plan for my players and my team? Everything we do in every clinic really revolves around these 5 essential elements of a good practice design. And again, furthering on some of the comments that Andres made, this is what we want for every drill, every practice, and every coach to deliver. Every single time our kids touch the ice, we want them to have a fun experience. And fun is the most interesting thing we do because we can define it in so many different ways. What fun is for an 8-year-old is different than a 10 and 12-year-old. What fun for a 10 and 12-year-old might look completely different than a 16 and 18-year-old. So when we talk about fun in our clinics, it's very much in an age-appropriate manner, as is constant decision-making. Anders referenced the difference of hockey players who are technically sound, but those who can play the game, right? And this is, again, a big focus for us as well. We want all our practices, no matter what age, for players to put in positions where they have to be aware and make decisions. Even at 8 and under, there's an element of decision-making that we can incorporate into our practices to make our players better. All our practices and drills have to be challenging. We would like them to look like the game. And this is probably the single most difficult concept for us to get across to our volunteer coaches, because sometimes what in people's mind looks like the game doesn't translate to the game. So it's more than seeing something and saying, oh, well, to the novice, that might look like the game of hockey, when people who are in hockey and have coached for a long time or in the business know, yes, that might look like the game to someone who's new to the game, but it doesn't translate. And then the last thing is puck touches. And puck touches for us really is a metaphor for repetitions, right? It could be touches of the puck. It just could be number of reps in a drill. But these 5 elements we find, and you would find if you took our coaching education class, would permeate or be through the thread that runs through all our levels. I won't spend a lot of time on each level, but I do want to mention a few key things. And you can see, I mean, in every coach, we have to have a welcome. We talk about USA Hockey updates. You see in Block G, what's new at USA Hockey? What are the rules like? What are the rule changes coming up? What do coaches want to know? And we also have every year a specific initiative pushed down from USA Hockey that our coaches need to either know or be better at. Right now, we're in a 4-year initiative to change the relationship between parents, coaches, and officials. We want to make our youth environment better through making better relationships so that our coaches understand what our officials are going through and our parents understand what our officials and our coaches are going through. So that you'll see, pardon me, that you'll see throughout all our levels. On the player development side or the coach development side, in level 1, some of the most important things we do are long-term athlete development, the idea of how to coach skills. So again, this is the intro of how do we deliver explanations to our players? How do we deliver demonstrations to our players? And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, interpretive practice. If I'm an assistant coach, can I interpret a practice? At level 2, you'll see that it expands on the level 1 knowledge with player development. And now we're going from that idea of being an assistant coach who can deliver a station to now all of a sudden understanding how can we practice plan? How can we help our players develop skill? What is skill acquisition? How do we observe a practice? And then we get into the constraints learning approach. How can we deliver constraints in our drills to make our players better? So again, our level 2 very much is an addition or builds on, we hope, what our coaches learned in level 1, and then we say how to improve a practice. Level 3, again, building on, we start to talk to our coaches about how do we define position and what is positioning. So very much so here, we're trying to get our coaches out of the way of playing hockey as a left wing, right wing, center, etc. But how do we interchange positions? I don't personally like the phrase positionless hockey because I believe personally there is positions in hockey. There are positions you line up and there are certain responsibilities. However, how we interchange those responsibilities and how we interchange responsibility or positions are very important to where the game is going in the future. So again, we build on level 2 with increased practice planning. We talk to our coaches about skill acquisition. We talk to them about how do we coach skill? And then we get into how do we have an intentional design and practice, right? Do our practice drills translate to the game? And do our practice drills deliver what it is we hope they are? And then our last level, our level 4, which is the highest of our youth coaching levels. And now we're getting into really a definition of what is learning, linking our activities to the game, and really a very broad discussion on the coach's impact or what does good coaching look like? And that's a very interesting topic because we don't feel there's one answer. And this is a topic where we truly are trying to take everything from levels 1 through 3 and say to our coaches, share with us your ideas on how you can make an impact in youth hockey. And what does good coaching look like to you, to your players, and to your association? So everything, hopefully, in our goal is to build on the level before. The last thing is that we've introduced coaching education or continuing education, excuse me. And after our level 4s, our coaches now, and this is new in the last 2 years, our coaches have to gain 5 continuing education credits over 3 years. depending on their level. If they're a level 4 or 5, they have an extra year to do that because they've advanced their coaching, and we give them a little leeway. But the idea here is not to limit education. We do not want coaches who want to get better or coaches who continually want to improve. We don't want to limit their educational experiences. So one of our biggest goals, initiatives, projects right now is developing these continuing education courses. What are they going to look like? Will they be modules? Will they be webinars? Will they be on ice? Will it be in player development? And as we find out, they're going to incorporate all of those things in order to help our coaches get better. Thank you.
Bob, thank you so much for sharing, and also then even sharing your screen. Very great presentation, and an awesome sharing from your program that you've been working with here in the last couple of years. We're having an open chat function here still for the participants in the webinar. Please use that if you have any questions to Bob or to Anders. And I think I see, Anders, you're still in the meeting here as well, right? Perfect. So we have a question in the chat function I would like to start off with here, and please feel free, both Anders and Bob, but I think looking on the time, this is aimed towards you, Bob, in that sense. And the question is, how do you evaluate whether the coaches are getting the knowledge you want them to have? Do they need to take a test, or do they have to submit a paper or something completely different to evaluate their maybe implementation or true understanding of your coaching program?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's very timely because so we have rolled out our levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 over the last 3 years. So this year we did a stair-step rollout where in year 1 we only rolled out level 1, in year 2, 1 and 2, then like that. So with finally the completion of the curriculum, this year we'll be adding a survey at the end of every I'm sorry, I should start with a pre-class survey. So each coach will get a survey before they take the class, which will kind of give us a baseline of their knowledge. So for level 1s, it'll be very general to find out what about hockey do they know. When they go to level 2, the level 2s will get a survey that is directly formulated by what they should have learned in level 1. So we're going to test their knowledge through this pre-course survey. And then at the end of 2, the 2s will get another survey, and we'll see where that survey sits from their pre-course survey the year before. It's a little bit of an IT challenge because we've had to now give specific coaching identification numbers to every coach for the life of their career. But the good news, and to answer Lasse's question, is we think that this will give us a great baseline or a great knowledge of finding out if our coaches are actually learning. And we're excited about it. This will be our first year where we implement that.
Thank you for sharing there, Bob. And maybe a little bit of a follow-up question on that as well. This is both for you, Bob, and for Anders. If you would have me as a, say, under 12 coach in your system, I've been to one of your clinics in the beginning of the season. I have a little bit of a halftime now with my under 12 team in a league. And I watch an hour performance, and maybe we play with standings and stuff like that, and we're not number 1. How do I know then that this is working? Is this something that you encounter sometimes with coaches that say, hey, if this now is so great, why are we not winning tournaments? Why are we not winning leagues? How would you encounter such question from a coach?
Should I start, Bob?
Go ahead, Anders. Yeah, sure.
That back again to the long-term pathway to focus on that one. I should have gone back to the coach and say, hey, go talk to your players. How do they feel? Do they have the feeling that they are developing as players? Do they feel quite competent? How do you like the togetherness within the team? Are they having fun? Because they will develop. They will, in the long run, become better players. And it's not during the U12 year you should win the trophies or the tournaments. I mean, in the Swedish top league, we have an average age of 27. We actually had an Olympic roster a couple of years ago when the average age of the men's were over 30 years old. So it's a lot about motivation, it's a lot about patience. So go back to make sure that your players are having fun and enjoying the hockey that you are helping them developing.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, fun is so important at every level. We find ourselves, because of our culture here in the United States, and not necessarily in a good way, but unfortunately our youth hockey, we don't have the environment where our parents and our coaches, and nobody does, allows development to happen. You know, so we are, like Anders, constantly preaching that development takes time and that you will see it in the long run. But there is one little difference that we have had to sort of make a concession for our coaches and maybe make a little bit of deal with our coaches. We actually tell all our coaches that we want them to win. We absolutely want them to win, right? Anders, not that you don't, but how you win is the important thing, right? Because, and it was our fault, but too often people in the United States are saying, oh, USA hockey, you know, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't want to win. And we have to actually tell them, yes, we do. But we know from science that you will win if you do the right things, and the players will get better if you do the right things. So we've had to make a little bit of a concession, but we think it's hit the mark a little bit more than the past voice we spoke with.
I actually couldn't agree more on what you said, but we have the same reactions from clubs and coaches as well, that we are not allowing the other players to win, or they go even further, that they say that we but all we want is to get them to compete, and we want the players to win. And that's what hockey is about. You should score more goals than the opponent team does. So of course we want them to win, but it's a how do you win? How do the coaches behave during games? That's the most important part. And the fun part is that those teams who focuses on the long term and help the players focus on their development, they are also winning more. So in the long run, I should say, it's quite easy to win a tournament for U11. Just play the best players a lot, to let the rest sit on the bench, and you will probably get a good result. But that's not what it's about.
I think a fascinating angle on both your presentations is a little bit on the player development aspect. And Anders, I think you said it so well in the beginning of your presentation, to have as many as possible, as long time as possible, which means that the players that we talked a little bit about, the youth hockey, the under 8, under 12, was a big part of many of the starting up phases. You talked about the BU1, for example, in Swedish hockey. But when when we see that progression and when you are able to keep players as long as possible and as many as possible for as long as possible, how do you turn this then to an adult audience when it comes to a coach coming into your system that maybe have done kids hockey, done youth hockey, worked with kids in a younger age span, but now moves into senior hockey and adult learning and education for players that are adults? Is that a big difference in your program to meet the needs of players that a coach work with that is not a kid or a youth player that is actually a grown-up adult in that way?
I think from a coaching perspective, you look at the way you coach people. They still are human beings with psychological needs, and they want to feel good and get the feeling that they still are getting better even though they are adults. So if you keep on focusing on the development pathway of the players, I think it's not that big difference. Of course, you need to have a different perspective. Kids have other needs than grown-ups and adults have, of course. But if you, as a coach, are kind of grounded in your philosophy of how you want to be perceived as a coach, I mean, it's human beings, and you don't know what reaction you will have when you give them instructions and all of that. So from that perspective, it doesn't really matter. That's kind of an answer as well.
It's interesting. I'm not sure we can affect the coaches who don't want to learn, don't want to get better, and don't want to bring the players along. And, you know, as we're doing this and as we're getting feedback, you know, we know there's going to be a percentage that are going because they have to.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't matter what we say. And like Anders, if we can make a difference for those who want to learn, I think it's a home run. It's a win for us when that happens. Yeah.
And I guess to keep on the track, Bob, I think at least that's one thing that I have experienced, and one thing that I think a lot about right now is that no matter how good of an education curriculum is set up, as Bob says, we will never praise everyone. So that means that the recruitment part of that the club does to get coaches to actually want to try to be coach is so important, because it's easier to do a great recruitment of a good coach than try to, through education, develop him or her to something great. I think it's quite hard. So you need to be quite clear on what you're seeking for when you're looking for coaches as well.
I would also like to ask both of you a little bit on the philosophy and the process about initiating a work as you have done here with overseeing your coaching program. To use a metaphor, I think that maybe when you're sitting in a boat and it starts to sink, then you start to think maybe we need to change a little bit in our boat here. This is not really going the way we want to. But when we Google pretty quickly USA Hockey medals, Swedish Hockey Association medals, it's easy to see, okay, we are a very successful organization if it comes to winning championship, winning titles, NHL drafts, etc. The boat is not really sinking in that way. Why is it important then for you to to invest and work with developing your coaching philosophy if you have had a lot of successful years in the measurements of medals and tournament wins and draft picks? Why was this an important aspect to start now and a few years ago?
Because you don't want to sink. It's too late. So if we, we don't want to be reactive. We want to be proactive. The knowledge surrounding this topic is constantly moving forward. So if we can kind of be on time with that and do the changes that are necessary, the boat won't sink. So if you wait, it's too late. You're muted, Bob. Still muted.
So I apologize. My dog wants to weigh in on this. Let me take care of this because I want to answer this question. Okay, maybe he's better now. Yeah, see, it's a very important question for him. I actually am working from home today. We had a big snowstorm and they closed the office. So I'm here at home and he's been listening attentively to this topic. But I think Anders said it all when he said, hey, you don't want to sink. You want to continually improve. And I think that, you know, at the end, that's so important. But there's also another part of it. And you know, we're so fortunate to have over 300,000 youth players play hockey. And in order to make kids have fun and to make lifelong hockey players and to build not just our national Olympic teams, national teams, draft picks, it's also very important to us because the largest majority of our business is youth hockey. And it's these kids. There you go. And I think part of our coach education, our desire is to make hockey for everyone. And to do that, you not only have to have great coaches to push kids along to the highest levels, but you have to have great coaches that keep kids in the game. And to do that, you have to get better every year.
Thanks, Anders and Bob, for elaborating a little in that. We actually have a question here in the chat from Sharif in South Africa, and it's aimed a little bit to you, Bob, there. And the question is, how do you deal with coaches within your association that does not always have the same vision or are not always aligned in with the structure or the bigger plan that you might have in your coaching curriculum in the educations? If they want to follow their own structure way and that it could have an impact on players that, for example, comes into a national team squad or team in the future, either as juniors or senior players.
Yeah, so hi, Sharif, and I'll be remiss if I don't mention I was down in South Africa for, I think it was 4 years on loan from USA Hockey on and off, helping with the program, and I certainly miss the people and the hockey down there. So just seeing the question brings back such fond memories. That's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's a difficult question because we do see it and we see it all over. The easy answer and a little bit of a cop-out would be to say more education, right? It's that constant conversation. It's the constant idea of bringing people into or under the umbrella so you have those conversations so we're all working as one for the goal as opposed to working separately. But I do recognize that is a very, very difficult thing to do. But the other thing I think too often that we see, and we see it a lot here in the United States, there isn't only one way to answer the question. There isn't only one way to solve the equation. So when we're talking about a national program, we believe that there are a lot of different ways for us within our development umbrella to get kids to the national program. Right? We don't have to have the exact same structure in Minnesota, say, that we have in Michigan. And they don't have to have the exact same structure in Michigan that they have in California. But those structures have to work for the player. And I think maybe, Sharif, that's the key. Too often, the structures that we're talking about are parent-based or adult-based or association-based, and the reasons are not what is good for the player, what is good for the kid. And if you go back to my presentation, the slide I didn't share, right? I talk about, does everything we do answer the question, is it good for the child, right? And I think really, I don't want to duck your question, but I think that that's really what has to get answered in your situation. is what is being done good for the adult, or is it good for the child? And if we can't say it's good for the child, we should relook at what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Bob, for answering there Sharif's question. Maybe a follow-up question that goes a little bit hand in hand in that, in convincing or presenting curriculums and programs. I think that the viewers here in this webinar today come back now to, if there's their committees, their clubs, with a lot of ideas, a lot of good examples, and want to continue to work with this back home. But coming then in and say, hey, you know what, we have a theory, or we have a work around SDT, or if it's the theory from Bloom's, and they start to go on Elite Prospect and see, okay, how many Stanley Cup did this Bloom win? You know, if you have one that is a theory that is maybe not hockey based, and then you have another one where we say, okay, our national team coach has been extremely successful, which one should I choose? It could maybe be easy to say, yeah, you know what, we know that this coach was successful, won many games and many championship. Let's lean a little bit to the thinking about the hockey coach, maybe rather than something coming from other theories. Is this something that you have encountered as a topic for discussion? Why you bring in theories that are maybe not primary hockey, but in education as a whole, or coming from a school system or other parts that is non-hockey related, and implement that in your hockey system?
Anders, you want to take that?
I can try. It's a huge question. I get almost the same answer that I said the last question. I mean, we have to do with human beings that are put in some kind of environment, and we try to help them to learn stuff. And this time it's about hockey. It's not about math or English or anything. So the mechanisms and how learning works is the same for humans. I think that's kind of one part of it. Then of course, when we ask the players on what they want from a great coach, of course there are some parts that relates to their hockey knowledge and hockey skills as well. But the most they want to is a great coach, a positive coach, a coach who sees me as I, who helps me develop. So that's kind of a more leads over towards that kind of competence, however we look upon the question.
Yeah, I think that Anders, when he talks about the person and the individual and the really the relationship, that's true. I think the other part of it, why shouldn't we use science and education to help us be better in hockey? Right? Some of our greatest meetings are talking to federations that play different sports. What can we learn from football or soccer? What can we learn from rugby? Like, some of this is so important, and sometimes I feel like hockey as a whole is so behind some of the other sports across the world and what's learning. And specifically to your question about coaching, if you look at the National Hockey League, it's a copycat league. Like, whoever wins the Stanley Cup, the next year, 10 teams are trying to do what they did last year. And then someone else wins and 10 teams are trying to do that. And you look no further than the media. And I think as hockey professionals, and I think as people involved in hockey coaching education, I think we have to be very, very careful of who we allow to drive the narrative. Right? We can't let the media drive the narrative. We can't let the coach who is on an island drive the entire narrative. I think we have to dig deeper than that. And that's why I do love it whenever I hear Anders talk about, the relationship, or, what do coaches want from a player? Because at the end of the day, just like every athlete is an experiment of one, every coach has to be true to themselves and how they deliver the message. I don't know if that had anything to do with your question, but I really enjoyed talking about it.
No, thank you so much, Bob. I have a little bit of a minute of silence there to see if Andres had something to add on for that.
Seems like I'm just repeating myself on whatever questions you're asking right now. So
Then Andres, I won't do that then. But guys, we really enjoyed having you with us here today. I think, as I said earlier, I think you inspired a lot of the attendance, you know, to take some of the learnings and ideas and the work you have done back to their organization. And I really would like to quote the one of the ones starting up with the Skills4All, Johan Boye, that said, "No excuses, just do it." And now we probably have a lot of people that feels that, okay, let's do it. Let's get started with this. There could be very small federations, big club, small club. And if you could leave just one last thing, what would be the important first step if you are in your organization, your federation, your district, your club, that you want to start now with your curriculums, you want to start with the programming, or you want to redo them, or you want to rethink your curriculums? What would be the one first step that you think is important for them to keep in mind, you know, before they get digging in that job?
Mine would be, don't wait, get started. A good plan now is better than a perfect plan later. You're going to make mistakes. So get started and get going. And as long as you have the best for the children in mind, you'll be successful.
yeah, I would say that do your homework, sit down with your board members or however your club is structured and discuss on what kind of coaches do we want to have. What do we want them to contribute to, and build your curriculum from that.
Thank you, Bob and Andres, for those send-alongs. Thank you for joining us here today, and that we had the honor to share your knowledge and work. It's very appreciated from the IIHF side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we really would like to wrap up today's Skills4All session. Big thank you to all the participants, both here in the meeting, but also watching externally. But you know what the best thing is with finishing off one Skills4All? It's really that we get to look forward to our next upcoming Skills4All. And as you can see on the screen right now, we will soon be back in a month, and then the focus will be on IIHF programs and what the IIHF has in the pipeline, both now here during this season, but also in the upcoming season, and sharing from different programs that are currently active, both within the IIHF, but also outside in our membership. So please save the date. We will send out more information to your federation and post online in our social media when we have our speakers and when we are ready to invite you back here again to the Zurich studio for Skills4All. And with that, from my side, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for your work and dedication to ice hockey. And the IIHF looks forward to have you back here on the Skills4All session coming up in March. Thank you.